What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another solo leveling Arise video. Real quick, before I start with this video, I want to give a big shout out to Burr. That's right. Moose, obviously Musu, the Holy Hells, I think it's Isu, as well as Bon Bomb, and a few others, many others actually, on my Discord and other Discords who have been working at this. Trying to figure out the game's mechanics, trying to understand all the testing. I've been a part of that. I've been testing my own stuff for a very long time. And with the new updates and all the new equipment that we're getting and all the new bosses that are coming out, we're learning a lot more about the game than we possibly ever could have. And it's a collaborative effort. Before I talk about specific topics, I do want to talk about something pretty drastic, and some things that a lot of people don't know about. Okay, so respect to Musu, obviously, who has been working diligently at this, and other testers. I'm actually waiting for when to release the full data, because of course, with my involvement, their involvement, we're all collaborating. I think it's fair to talk to everybody first to make sure we get all the proper things. But I do want to discuss things that are affecting the game that you may not know, and how it affects the game, and what will actually help you guys have a better understanding of it. So first off, let's start with the very basic things. Okay, your stat sheet. All right, your stat sheet is a very, very big part of the game. Okay, but it's also extremely deceiving. So this stat sheet here is not really that big of a deal, because this is pretty straightforward, right? The one thing I will point out is the higher levels you go, the more precision becomes more important, obviously, especially for testing purposes. We put 99% precision. Right now I have 82%. For me personally, I'm still good with the 85, but it's known if you have 99% precision with about like 34 to 35k attack, your DPS kind of goes up a little bit more, right? So that's why it's a little more important to also focus on getting yourself the precision gems over anything else, even though it's technically a CP loss. Here's what I want to talk about. This stat sheet here is the deceiving part. Okay, so let's talk about something very simple. You guys see these percentages, right? And if you click on anything here, right? So HP will never change. That doesn't get affected by anything. MP won't change. Attack won't change. All that stuff is never affected by anything. Precision is actually affected. We'll talk about what affects precision. Defense is not affected. So the main core stats here are never going to be affected. They will remain exactly the same no matter what you fight, who you fight, it doesn't matter. Okay? The only thing that will change these is, of course, getting hit, any type of debuff on you, etc. But in terms of like the game mechanics, will they reduce any of these? No, unless there's a hidden, mode that has some sort of a debuff, then it'll tell you ahead of time. Now, precision does get affected, crit rate gets affected, crit damage get affected, cooldown reduction does not, defense pen will get affected, damage increase will get affected, and damage reduction will not. Okay, so I want to talk about the ones that get affected and what is affecting them and why they are affected, and what you need to know. Okay, so what can possibly affect these numbers? So for example, this 82% here can be affected by numerous different things. So number one, precision can be affected by, I think it's one major thing, and that is not the level of the boss, but instead being in the red combat power or below the combat power, the required combat power. So what I mean by that is, if you guys are new to this is an age-old tale of things that affect the game, right? If I go to hard mode, for example, let's just say I'm doing this chapter, right? If I do this chapter here, let me just get through this part. Sorry, I didn't realize that was a new chapter. Well, let's say I do this fight here, right? Because I am below the total power here, there's actually a penalty to almost every stat. Now, one thing to note as well too that matters is going to be the boss's level. We're going to talk more about that very shortly, and that's actually going to play a major role in all this explanation. But having lower power than the recommended power instantly affects all of your stats. All right, that would affect your stat for crit rate, crit damage, precision, defense pen, and damage reduction. All of those are affected by being in the penalty of the total power requirement. So let's just say I'm here, right? Let's say that's my power right there. This is a massive loss to all your stats. Now, if you go back to watch my original video on this, there's a chart that we calculated. I believe it's about a 30% loss on all of your stats. The only thing that this doesn't affect is your actual passives. So any passives from, let's say, Big Rock, the 11%, for example, will not be affected by that. The 11% will maintain no matter what your combat power is. It's the only consistent. Also skills. Any skill stats, any buffs in the game will not be affected by the combat power. But your stat sheet is extremely extremely deceptive because of this. Okay, so that's one thing to note. If you are above the combat power, just that's another one to note as well too. Before we found that there might have been a little bit of a buff if you were above the combat power. Now we're finding that that's actually not the case. We did a lot more testing and we found that even if you were in the blue actually is the same as being in the white, the recommended power. You actually don't even get a bonus. There's no significant increase in anything. There's no actual damage bonus, nothing. It's just you're above. That's it. And how we know this is we've done like exclusive testing on damage builds. We've done exclusive testing on no damage builds, and the numbers are always the same no matter what. If you're in the white recommended or if in the blue, it doesn't affect damage. Now, it may affect other things, but damage is not one of them. So the whole illusion of maybe getting a buff and being in the blue doesn't exist. All right, it's just to say you're safe. You're nowhere near the red, and technically, in my opinion, there should absolutely be a buff. All right, so those are the things I want to point out. Now, the closer you are to the combat power, break damage also is affected. Just so you guys are aware, break damage is a major part of this game, and the amount you break will also be tied to how close you are to the recommended power. If you're too far from the power, you will not be able to do a lot of break damage. So keep that in mind. That's why a lot of people are not being able to beat hard mode Baron, because they are lacking the break damage potential due to their combat power being below the recommended. So that's a very, very important one to note. And this is why breakers with Almighty Break and stuff come through a lot bigger now, because their break damage, even though it's stunted, is still going to be doing better than anyone else's break damage. Okay, so very, very important to remember that part. What would we get? Oh, let's go. All right, did I already have that? I don't even know if I already have that. I don't think I have that already. Shit, that was a good one to get. God, look at free to play. Let's go. So that's very important, okay? So combat power, being below the recommended combat power affects many, many things. Your stat sheet, first off, and then your break power, the second thing, okay? Now, another thing that is affecting your total stat sheet as well, and it's going to kill your stats, is the monster level, all right? And I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. So when I'm fighting a boss, let's say I want to do Forest, right? And I want to do, let's say, Proof of the Strong 10. Let's just say I apply this and I try to go fight this boss. Now you guys can see he's level 91. Okay, I'm going to move my screen over and we're on level 94. So our stats against him will not be affected because we are a little above the level. All right, above the level. Now, when you are fighting an enemy whose level is much higher, your stats start to diminish quite greatly. All right. Now let's just say I let's go to 20, right? And this is now level 109. Okay. Now I'm going to give you guys a simple stat here. Let's just go to Mirai's stat. Right away, you can tell there is going to be a description here that says the chance to inflict critical hit damage plus critical rate, by the way, the required stat value increases depending on the target's level. So if the target's level is higher than yours, there will be something that will diminish this percentage all the way across the board. Let me tell you how great that diminishment is, and we'll show you guys more stats again when we did testing with my pay to win account on crit hit damage. I was at 30k crit hit damage, will put me about 220, 230%, right? When I was fighting a level 109 with SJW, I was doing 127% crit damage. Yeah, nowhere near the 204. Okay, so level makes a big difference, and this also affects everything across the board here. So critical hit rate will definitely be affected by this. This is why Moose brought out that whole video over critting, this is what he was referring to, and it's absolutely true. Over critting is a massive part of the game, because when you fight enemies that are above your level, you will be facing a reduction in your crit and all of the rest of these stats that show this exact value, right? So crit damage, defense pen, damage increase, all of this is lowered. Now we're doing testing on defense pen, damage increase right now, so we'll find those numbers as well eventually, but I can tell you right now, the level of monster that you fight greatly will diminish your stats, all right? So keep that in mind. I would have, like, for the most part, you can always say 30 to 40% reduction, maybe even sometimes 50% reduction. 30 to 40 seems a little more accurate based on the level of the monster. So the higher the level compared to you, the more those stats will diminish. And that stat sheet is, again, looking very deceptive. And if you are doubling down here with monster level plus in the red, you're even more trouble. Yeah. So that's a very, very big common reason why a lot of people can't beat this content, okay? And this is why when you fight things like let's say, I don't know, guild boss, right? When you fight the guild boss only has level 80 and 50k. So you're always above. when you're level 90 and above. So your stats maintain, and that's why you can do so much damage on a boss like this, or POD, right? Where POD, the boss's stats are, again, diminished because it's only a 50k boss with, I don't know, whatever the heck the boss's information is, level 60, right? So there you guys go. So again, or I guess not 50k, he's 178k, but either way, you understand, he's level 60, right? So making it a lot easier for you to be able to combat this without any diminished stats, allowing you to fully use your full potential to do damage. And when you go into the other part here that also affects it, and that's going to be those things you see on WOBL, right? Which have, and they existed elsewhere as well, but WOBL is where I'm thinking of right now, where you have those flames, right? See the flames over here? Right here? That right there. This indicates a high difficulty battle. That may be difficulty clear, depending on what hunters and equipment you use, even if you're above the recommended total power. Okay, so this right here is also a factor that will affect damage you take, the break damage you give, the damage you put out as well too, right? So we don't know exactly what this is. I did notice when they reduced one of the flames from 2 to 1, the break damage was easier. The breaking bar actually was easier to break, so that we know for sure, but everything else around that we don't know. Also, you can see here he's also level 97, so again, reducing the amount of your stats against this boss, right? If you, versus normal, or if you look here, is level 90, so if you're level 90, you're able to do it, and there's no flame here. So again, you can definitely look at your stat sheet and think you have what you have, but now with this knowledge in the back of your mind, remember, a lot of that stuff is not going to be real. So you're going to have to go above and beyond those numbers in order to see true potential. And this is where cores come into play and other stats. So again, we will give you guys, shout out to the testing team. Again, I'm not going to present any of that data until Musu is ready to present it and I am ready to present it, and we'll present it together or on our separate channels, so it has the most wide reach of audience. And I hope other content creators take that and run with it as well. But for now, just note that stat sheet is not to be followed. It's a trifling hoe. All right, and it's tricking you. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what affects you in the game and what can reduce the stats. And now hopefully you guys understand. All right, guys, Payne, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.